that. And yes, God's a God of redemption, and our family and our life is a picture of that. But sometimes people they hang out with us. They're like, man, y'all's marriage is so good and your family's so good. And then they're in a tough marriage that's the first marriage. And I've literally had people say this to me, like, well, it worked out for you. I think it'll work out for me. And I kind of just want to look them in the eyes and say, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know the cost. Well, hey, everybody, welcome into a super special edition of the Under God Podcast. Happy Wednesday to you. You're right in the middle of your week. We're going to try to get you through it, but I am so excited. Let me tell you, I love the people we have on the podcast. I love Pastor Stephen. I love Pastor Daniel, all the other guests, but there is no one actually on planet Earth that I love more than the person sitting across from me today. You guys are in for a real treat. This is my wife, Ashley. How you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Good. I'm super happy to be here. I'm a faithful listener of the Under God podcast, so I'm excited to
She is one of our biggest fans. She's always like, sometimes she'll listen to it before I do, and she's like, I love this episode. And I'm thinking, man, which one was that? When did we record that? I got to go check it out. And so she keeps me on my toes with the podcast. By the way, we're going to be doing a Q&A today, but I get no more questions from anybody else than I do from her. So she'll listen and what were y'all talking about this? Tell me what you think about this. It made me think about that. And so I'm honored to have you here. And I'm honestly a little distracted. So I may just, look at her. Let's just get the camera on her for a second. Yeah. When I look at her, man, it's hard. Sometimes she sits on the front row at church when I'm preaching. And I just forget everything I was talking about. I just look at her and my heart starts to beat and my stomach gets a little fluttery. And so anyway, but I'm excited to do this today. This is going to be our final episode of questions and answers coming from the Strong Marriage Conference that we did. So I hope you guys have been enjoying. All of our podcast listeners got to kind of take a trip inside the Strong Marriage Conference that we did at Vintage Church. And from that, we took a lot of questions. And one set of questions really centered around divorce, remarriage, blended families. I did a message on divorce and remarriage in the conference. If you missed that one, honestly, go back and listen to it because it's going to give a lot of context for things we're going to talk about today. But because this is a situation that we live, unfortunately, early in life, I went through a divorce. In my mid-20s, I experienced a divorce, and Ashley and I got married on the other side of that. Just for a pinch of background, if you haven't listened to it, I was married with 2 kids and went through something that I wouldn't wish on an enemy, going through a divorce, the separation and tearing of a family. And then she married me, and I was her first husband. And so she was, I don't know, maybe a lot brave and a little crazy, and hopefully a little bit in love, and decided, I think I'm going to choose to marry this guy and his kids, because in reality, I mean, that is kind of what it felt like, right? Would it feel like getting married to all 3 of us a little bit?
For sure. It was a package deal.
Yeah, it was a package deal. And so because of that, I have personally experienced the heartbreak that comes from ripping a family apart. And that never really goes away when there's kids involved, especially because you're living in the constant reality, the constant reminder the kids are having to deal with the fallout. And so the one thing I want to say on the outset, because we're going to talk about hope and we're going to talk about how God can fix broken things. But listen, God's design is one man, one woman, one family for life. And anything that deviates from that introduces all kinds of complexities, all kinds of challenges, all kinds of hard times and heartaches and all of that. And yes, God's a God of redemption, and our family and our life is a picture of that. But sometimes people they hang out with us. They're like, man, y'all's marriage is so good and your family's so good. And then they're in a tough marriage that's the first marriage. And I've literally had people say this to me, like, well, it worked out for you. I think it'll work out for me. And I kind of just want to look them in the eyes and say, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know the cost. So yes, God has been faithful. I married the most amazing woman on the planet who has made it a little easier. But a lot of times when you go through a divorce, you don't fix problems, you just create new problems. And then you involve other people in those problems, like I did with you. And so with that, we're going to get in today and just read some of the questions that got asked of us. Some of these we can relate to better than others. Some of these aren't really our story, but we'll do our best to try to give you some biblical wisdom. I'm going to go ahead and read the first question, and then we'll let Ash take the first stab at answering it. Here we go. It says, how do you honor the reality of past marriage and children while still building a new unified marriage that's not living in the shadow of the past? How do you honor the past marriage? How do you honor those kids? Ash, tell us a little bit about how you think about that after 20 years of being a bonus mom.
Yeah. It's a good question, first of all. I love talking about honor. For me, honoring was where I could show honor, I wanted to show honor. So first of all, I wanted to show honor to Joshua and Asher's mom. She is their mom. I tried to honor her by not ever trying to take her place, by not trying to, cast her aside. I always tried to honor her. And then once I was a mom, bonus mom instantly to them. Once we had Ellie, I saw even more just about motherhood and about it. It helped me to easily honor her even more.
Yeah.
So,
And you did a great job of that. I think, when you're dealing with the blended family situation, and we'll get into some of the challenges later, but there's always challenges. And so I think, you would say that's a choice you made.
right, for sure.
To do that and to only speak about their mom in honoring ways. I think, for me, when you start talking about building a new unified marriage, not living in the shadow of the past, we just had to sell out to this is our covenant before God. And I sort of, because I've been married before, I don't make a lot of jokes about divorce because it's really not funny, but I do say you're my last wife. I'm never having another one. I don't care what happens.
That's right.
And so we just decide that we are going to be unified.
Yeah.
And then we kind of deal with, honestly, a lot of this is day to day, month to month, year to year, event to event, and try to think. But if you can just think man, I want to honor where I can give honor.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there's not opportunities to dishonor. They come up all the time.
Right.
But choosing to avoid those and to lean in to honor where you can, I think is really good. Isaiah 43 says, when it's speaking about, things that have happened in the past and now God doing something new, he says, forget all that. It is something, it is nothing compared to what I'm going to do. I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Don't you see it? Listen, God's always doing something new. This is even talking about good things in the past, saying, forget that. There's good things coming. When there's been hard things in the past, forget that. There's something good that's coming. Let me go ahead and move to question number 2. Definitely want to get your thoughts on this one, babe. How can somebody work through resentment or insecurity about their spouse's first marriage, especially when there was a covenant before you and there's deep wounds from that relationship? I know that, you dealt with a little bit of resentment, maybe not so much insecurity. You can talk about that, but tell us a little bit about how that worked for you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just take it back to, when you're growing up as a young girl dreaming of your marriage and your husband, you're not envisioning, I'm going to marry someone who's already done all of this before and has 2 kids. So that wasn't like the fairy tale story that I grew up thinking that it would be. So, but like Nate said, it's a blessing. My bonus boys are a blessing. I can't imagine life without them. There's no Nate and Ash without Joshua and Asher, and I'm so thankful for it. But I will say, blended family or not, there are opportunities for resentment in any family with any spouse or relationship. So I just always try to take every thought captive and make it obedient to the Lord. If I had some feelings of resentment, I would really try and just pray and talk to the Lord about taking away those feelings, replacing them with something that's obedient and focusing on the blessing, focusing on the good where I could.
Yeah. And, I didn't see a lot of insecurity from you. You didn't have a lot. One of the things I love about you is you're a really confident person. You're not prideful. You don't have hubris. You don't walk around thinking I'm better than everybody else. So why would I ever be insecure about someone? But you are secure in yourself and you're confident that, we got married because you believed that God told you to marry me. And so that goes to this too. You can't ever forget who else is involved in the marriage. So I think a lot of the reason you didn't battle with a lot of insecurity wasn't because there wasn't opportunity for that. There could be, again, because I had experienced things with someone else that you wish I had only experienced with you in life. But because you were rooted and grounded in the Lord and who He's made you to be, and you have a lot of confidence in that, you're able to battle that. So, I watched that. So I'm just saying the best, antidote to insecurity is security in who you are in Christ, irrespective of any other relationships. But yeah, when you're talking about deep wounds, obviously, when you go through a divorce, there's deep wounds, and I'm not going to get into all of them, but one of the things I dealt with, and just be kind of vulnerable here on the podcast, and try not to uncover the other person any more than necessary, but I battled with a lot of feelings of rejection, kind of, and it could, whether it's my fault, her fault, let's just say a lot of it was my fault, but I felt a lot of rejection. I felt like I never really measured up, felt like I wasn't ever really loved for who I was. I mean, that's just my experience. I'm not saying that everything she did made me feel that way, but that was how I felt. And so when we get married, I know you had to deal with this for me, and sometimes it still comes up, even over 20 years later after that divorce. There's still times when, you may say something or do something that triggers some familiar thing in the back of my mind, and I take that as rejection. Maybe talk about how you've loved me through that a little bit, because you have had to do that. You've had to help me heal in some ways from those feelings that I brought into marriage. That might be helpful for people to hear about.
Yeah, that's a good thought. So we have dealt with that, as you said, a lot. And I would just constantly try to remind you of how much I love you, that I did marry you because I felt like God called me to marry you, that I chose you, that I will continue choosing you through our relationship. And acknowledge the past, acknowledge you. We never tried to act like your previous marriage didn't happen. It wasn't like, oh, we can't talk about this because this is messy. We talked about it. We talked about, hey, listen, this was true there. This is not true now. Those are lies that you're believing, and that is not how I see you. That's not how I feel about you, and that's not what I'm doing to you. Yeah. So we need to focus on the truth. We need to focus on how much I do love you. I'm never going to leave or abandon you. I don't want you to feel that way, and just assure you and be there for you and walk you through it. We all come in with baggage. I had never been married before, but I had been in past relationships that I also brought baggage in. So it's just
you did break off an engagement.
I did 5 weeks.
So I was a little worried you might do that to me too.
5 weeks before our wedding, I broke it off because the Lord clearly spoke to me to do that, and so I had baggage as well that you had to deal with, and it's just loving each other through it. Sitting with each other in it, but also not staying there, moving past it, and not believing the lies, but replacing it with truth and loving each other.
Yeah, and you've done an incredible job of doing that. I mean, I say all the time, like, there's a few different concentric circles of people that I could say I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. But the truth is, right at the middle of that circle is Jesus, and then the very next one is you. And I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be on this podcast today. Our church wouldn't exist today if it wasn't for you helping me through. And I don't know that you or I knew that you were really signing up for that. Like, I don't know if we had some good premarital counseling, but we still
sure did not know we were signing up.
We did. We definitely didn't know, which, interestingly enough, we didn't really talk about this ahead of time, but maybe we can talk about it now for just a second. We got into marriage counseling not because we thought our marriage sucked, but because of blended family issues. I mean, and so, we were a little bit like, I don't know how to do this part.
Yeah.
Like, I know how to relate to you as you. And when we were alone, like, things were always good. Like, we rarely fought when it was just the two of us, but we would get in fights because we're trying to navigate something, again, that God didn't intend. So we're already having to try to apply God's wisdom to something that wasn't God's best idea and wasn't his design. But even in that counseling, that's where I started realizing, like, man, I'm projecting feelings that I associated with my prior relationship onto you. Maybe just talk about the value of counseling, especially as a blended family, because I know you are a big advocate of that.
I am a big advocate of that, but I will say that I wasn't always. I don't know if you remember this, but Nate, I'm sure you do. Yeah, so Nate at the beginning was like, I don't want to go to counseling because we have to. I want to proactively go to counseling. There's things that I know I'm not aware of that I'm bringing in. Same for you. I want to go to it. Well, I was not in agreement with that. I was like, I'm not bringing in a stranger to talk about, intimate, personal things. It was pride. It was honestly pride and fear that stopped me from that.
You weren't raised to be vulnerable either.
I was not raised to be vulnerable. We were a sweep everything under the rug, pretend like it didn't exist. And Nate's like, I nicknamed him Ferdinand, like the bull from the movie, because he is like, no, we are talking about it, and we're talking about it now. So anyways, he wore me down, and we went because I did see the value in it. I think I was just scared. So we went to counseling early on in our marriage, and we stayed in counseling for years. And it was probably one of the most beneficial things that has ever, been a part of our marriage. She taught us how to think through things. We had to go through the fact that at first Nate was kind of Disneyland dad because he had a lot of divorce guilt. And I was like, okay, but that's not doing the boys any favors. We've got to, parent how we're supposed to if you weren't in a blended family. And so she just helped us talk through really great things. There were things that she told us to table. Listen, this is a sticking point and y'all are going to get in the car and scream at each other. So you're going to table this and you're not going to talk about it till we meet next time. So I cannot express how beneficial counseling is. Don't be scared. Now, I will preface that by saying you need to go to a godly counselor.
Yeah,
I have
this
heard
better be their first textbook.
1,000%. There's too many stories that we've heard of people that don't go to godly counselors, and it's garbage. So you have to go to a godly counselor, but please invest in your marriage. You will not regret it.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Well, 2 Corinthians 5:17 says that anyone who is in Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, the new has become. And I think, again, we're going to hit this over and over again in this episode. God has to be in the center of what you're doing. God's ways have to be at the center of what you're doing in your own personal discipleship. In our church, that's one of our 5 values for leadership is personal discipleship. Yeah. And that is absolutely important and crucial as you're, bringing whatever past you brought. It doesn't have to be another marriage. It could be another significant relationship that almost became a marriage. It could be other, you could be bringing a previous abusive situation, bad, dumb decisions in high school, all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when you're forming this new covenant, and even if you're already in one, the goal is to become someone different because of the work of Christ inside of you. Why don't you read the next question for us?
Yeah. How do you protect and prioritize your marriage when kids, schedules, ex-spouses, and blended family dynamics constantly pull for attention? That's a good question.
Yeah. So I'll talk about schedules a little bit, and I'll let you talk about prioritizing your marriage. Sometimes schedules are in your control and sometimes they're not. And so everyone wants to have a job where they control their own schedule. They want to have a life where everything is on their terms. That is rarely true. It's not true for almost anybody, even people, who you think they control their own schedules. They don't. It's funny. People are like, oh, well, you pastor the church. You make on your own schedule. I'm like, well, yes and no. I mean, we have 3 churches. We have a podcast schedule. I've got, Mr. Producer here can only be here at a certain time, and Pastor Stephen, and same thing, and so schedules are what they are. But when it comes to schedules in a blended family, there are schedules around things like holidays, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But here's what I would say when it comes to scheduling around ex-spouses, man, just be a person that is consistent and communicate clearly. And again, we're going to come back to that theme too when we talk about relating to kids, but everybody's got to have eyes wide open. And when there is an entire other family or even another person, even if it's just, maybe the ex-spouse isn't remarried or whatever, but there's another family, the person and the kids involved, they've got a schedule too. Yeah. And so, you're going to have a shared schedule, and then you're going to have time that's not. And it may be frustrating for you to try to navigate that, but just embrace kind of, as one of our elders, Andrew, tells our guys, embrace the suck, embrace the suck that there's some things about the schedule you can't control. And then there's some things that you are, and then work again to constantly try to bring healthy dynamics into the time that you have. And when you don't have those kids around because they're back at the other family's home, make the most out of the time you have there. I think the better part of this question that I want you to talk to is how to prioritize your marriage when life is chaotic, because it's not just blended families that have a chaotic life.
Right. In fact, yeah, I think every family and schedule can be chaotic, and so blended family or not, but so important to prioritize your marriage. It's so important to show your kids that your husband or your wife comes first. You did a great job modeling this, I feel like, when our kids were growing up, as just always letting them know that this relationship comes first and we're going to be there for them and they're going to have their needs met and all of those things. But I just think find ways to connect. I love Pastor Stephen and Kyla. They wake up in the morning and they're connecting first thing in the morning, spending time together. I just think you have to be really intentional with your schedule. Everyone is busy. Everyone has crazy conflicts in their schedule, but you have to prioritize your family. And when you do that, God will bless the rest of your life. So there have been seasons where it's been a little more difficult when we have young kids and they're up all night and we're not sleeping. You have to find time to prioritize your spouse and let them know that they're number one no matter what.
Yeah, and you when you have small kids, it's easy to think it's always going to be this way,
right?
But both of your bonus kids, my first two boys, both of them are out of the house now.
Right.
Josh, you guys know him. He's been on the podcast many times, and he works.
They're welcome to come back.
Yeah, they can come back anytime, but they're not in the house anymore. And guess who still is? You and me. And
Right.
our other two, we got another one that's, boy, she would be out tomorrow if she could just figure out how to pay her bills. You know,
For
she's
sure.
ready to be independent, you know, and as much as it grieves us to watch kids leave the nest, you know, and our 13-year-old, I think we're probably still a little deceived thinking he's going to always be there, you know. But all we have to do is look at, there's two that are already gone,
Right.
and there's another one trying to wiggle her way out as quick as she can, and eventually he will too. And guess who's still going to be there? Us. There's a reason that you see people once their kids are out of the house. That's the most vulnerable time for divorce for people because they build their whole life around their kids. And in blended families, the tendency to do that is even higher. You mentioned Disneyland, Dad. You're constantly feeling like I got to make up for what I don't have.
Right.
You know, I got to cram 5 days that I didn't have into the 2 that I did, or whatever the arrangement may be. And at the end of the day, you got to prioritize these two people before God. And I'm going to let you read Ecclesiastes 4. I know that's one of your favorite scriptures to come back to on this topic that really did kind of guide your thinking and guides how we see this.
Right. In Ecclesiastes 4:9-12, it says, 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm.
Yes, Lord.
But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better, for a triple-braided cord is not easily broken. I do love that.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's what we got for that one. Let me read this next question, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it because I love how you lived your life, you know, even a little before me and early on in marriage, long before I was in full-time ministry. Here's the next question. How do you establish spiritual rhythms, church involvement, spiritual leadership when family members come from different backgrounds, traditions, or even levels of faith? So spiritual rhythms, church involvement. Talk to us about that a little bit.
It's just always been something that's really important to me. I'm very thankful to have a mom who raised me with the importance of church being in the mix. We went to church every single week, and it was how I grew up. And so I missed it when I wasn't there, if I had to miss for being sick. And so it was just always something that I did. It's something that I did when I was single in young adult years. It's just always been a rhythm in my life. So serving, I served almost every single week because I wanted to and saw the benefit of it. And it's just so important. So I think that should be high priority in your life, in your family, with your kids.
So you didn't start serving in the church just when I started working for a church.
I did not, way before you, babe.
Yeah, I know. I know. And early in our marriage, I traveled a lot. I had a job that required, the job itself was 100% travel. So if I was working, I wasn't home.
Right.
And you know, one of the things I love about you is that even when I was gone, I didn't have to tell you, hey, get to church, take the kids to church. Like that was always a big deal for you.
Yeah.
And I tell people this all the time. I don't know if they really believe us, but you know, you and I both, we probably served 48 Sundays a year or more every year for years. Like people talk about serve once a month, and at Vintage, you know, that's like our minimum standard for membership requirement. And people are like, oh, cool, I just do that. I would hate life serving once a month. You're missing out. You're missing out. There's so much value in just being involved in the house of God. And so I love that even when I was traveling, and you're now basically functioning like a single mom to 2 bonus kids, to the one that we had together at the time, you know, during that whole season. And I really want you to talk more about that because I think that was an anchor for you even when I was gone and you're navigating all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And we talk about the importance of spiritual family. And when we talk about serving once a month, you're really not getting to be a part of that spiritual family. And like Nate said, when I look back on when he was working out of state and I was like a single mom and also working full time, I look back and I'm like, how did we do it? Well, we did it because we were planted. We were planted in the church. We had a spiritual family surrounding us. If one of the kids got sick or something was going on, guess who came to our aid and to help us? It was spiritual family. And I just feel like just having that, the kids growing up, running around in church and, sometimes being forgotten because they were at church so much. But I just think it's just so important. And I feel like it helped keep peace in our home. It helped keep peace and stability in our whole lives.
Yeah.
So,
I'm belaboring that a little bit because I know we have a lot of people listening to this podcast that are in the military.
right.
And so, my situation at the time, I wasn't in the military, but they did call it deployment, and I would literally live somewhere else. At times, I was in some places for 6 months, 9 months, a year. A couple of them were over a year that I was literally lived in another place. I had a different address. I went to a different church, and
3 years straight.
For pretty much for 3 years straight in that, some a little before, a little after, but there was a 3-year section that I was lucky to be home for a 3-day weekend. So it wasn't military. Nobody was shooting at me except for that one time in downtown Atlanta. And then I'd get home, maybe every 6 weeks or so for a 3-day weekend, or every once in a while you could come visit. So a little bit better deal than people who are having to serve overseas in the military. But the effect on you was pretty similar to spouses who have someone that gets deployed. And so I just want to say, I hear this a lot from military spouses, especially at our Harker Heights location when I'm hanging out up there. And, a lot of those people do get deeply involved, but a lot of them don't. They're kind of hanging out like, well, my husband's deployed. It's so hard. What would you say to those ladies that are in that situation?
I would just say, do everything you can to be there, and you get in that rhythm, and you may have to work a little harder to get there. You may lose a little sleep. You may have to wake up a little bit earlier, but once you do it, the benefits so far outweigh the inconvenience. It will stabilize you. It will help you. It will build you up spiritually. You will be a better wife. You will be a better parent. You will be a better coworker and friend if you are coming to church on a regular basis, serving and being with your spiritual family and growing in your relationship with the Lord. It's just, I can't say enough about how important it is for you to do that.
Yeah. I love Joshua 24:15. If you refuse to serve the Lord, then choose today who you serve. And the question really is, you have the option of serving the Lord or serving something else.
Right.
And you can be a Christian, but not really serving the Lord. What is service to the Lord even today? What did Jesus say? Whatever you've done to the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you've done it to me. What's he telling you? He's telling you that to serve him is to serve his family.
Right.
And so that's part of the choice you make. If you decide, I'm not going to serve in my church, I'm not going to serve my spiritual family, or I'm going to serve very infrequently and very inconsistently, and I'm going to decline and call out all the time because life is tough and it's hard. In a way, you're saying, I'm not going to serve the Lord. I'm going to just serve my interest in what is comfortable for me, what's easiest for me. And as we all know, everything in life that's worth something costs something.
For sure.
You want a nice wedding ring, it's going to cost you. You want a nice body, it's going to cost you time in the gym. Whatever, if you want nice things, it's going to cost you something. And if you want to have a good, healthy relationship with the Lord, it's going to cost you denying yourself and getting involved in the church and serving. And whether you're in a blended family, not a blended family, single person, that truth remains for everybody. Let's keep going to the next question here. How do couples build unity in a blended family without forcing relationships, without rushing emotional bonds that take time to develop? Obviously, you had to step right into this with 2 bonus boys. Talk to us a little bit about what that looked like for you.
Yeah, for me, again, honoring their mom as their mom, they didn't need another mom. Thankfully, in our family, Joshua and Asher have a great mom who loved them, loves them, and they didn't need, they didn't need a replacement mom. So I constantly tried to show honor with that. I constantly just tried to be an added person in their life to love and support them. And so I think you build the relationship like you build any relationship. You love them, you support them, and then it just slowly evolves over time. I wanted them to know, early on I said, you don't have to call me mom. You call me whatever you want to call me. I love you. We don't use the term step in our family. We've never said stepchildren, stepmom, stepkids. I feel like it has a negative connotation. We've always said bonus, but I've just always said, I'm here for you. I want to support you. I constantly, where I could say this, I said, I don't want to replace your mom. You have a really good mom who loves you so much. Where I could constantly talk about how good of a mom they had, how good of a bonus dad that they had. I tried to throw that in there. And then I just built the relationship just kind of naturally and organically. I just tried to love them and support them. When it came to discipline in our home, a lot of times I deferred to Nate on that because I am coming in, right? They have 2 parents. Of course, there were times when I was in the home and I had to deal with things when you weren't there, but I tried to defer to you, to you to discipline them, so it wouldn't be like, who is this person coming and,
Yeah.
getting on to me? But yeah, just kind of naturally built that, and just I was patient. I was patient with them whenever it was easy for them to love me, and maybe sometimes when it was hard for them to love me, I just tried to keep loving them.
Yeah, I love that answer. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to build relationships the same way that you do. So whether it's with bonus kids, step kids, whatever you want to call them, it's the same thing you're going to do with anybody else. It is through love. It is through patience. I think shared positive experience, that's a really big deal. Again, that's a big deal whether you're a blended family or not a blended
Right.
family. Now the only people who live under our roof are us and our biological kids. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean the other two don't exist, but we haven't really changed what we do. Like,
No.
we did the same things with them when they were there that we now do with Ellie and with Luke, and we try to think about how do we have shared positive experiences, and some of that goes back into what we just talked about: being in church together, worshiping together, showing up, serving together, and then some of it is the fun things that we do. The next question we had really is kind of a bleed over, which is how can the step parent build trust and connection with stepchildren who are hesitant or emotionally guarded? I don't know. I mean, our kids weren't really emotionally guarded towards you, so that's not a part of that question that we could relate to. And I know you kind of covered. Is there anything else you would add if you think somebody's dealing with an emotionally guarded kid, how to uniquely build trust with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's important is to constantly tell yourself to put yourself in their position. It is not the kid's fault that their parents aren't together and aren't divorced. So I constantly try to put myself in that filter, like, this is hard, this is difficult, and they're going through emotions that we don't understand. So put yourself in their shoes, and just constantly show them that you're not going to leave them through the hard or through anything. You're not going to abandon them. You're not going to love them less. You're not going to treat them any differently. If you do have biological children, they're all equal in your eyes, and you love them and support them. I love 1 Corinthians, of course, 13:4-7 says, love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It's not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. Love never loses faith, is always hopeful, endures through every circumstance. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good reminder.
I think that's a great reminder, and not to put all your business on the table, but we both have our stuff. I mean,
Right.
and early in our marriage, especially because you hadn't really grown up learning how to deal with conflict well, when there was conflict, it would bubble and come out in the form of anger.
Right.
And so there were a lot of moments of anger and, all that goes with that. And one of the things that I love about what you did, because listen, this isn't all perfect. I mean,
No.
we're sitting here, under the lights, and I mean, there's not enough makeup in the world to help me, so I don't even try.
And 20 years into our journey.
And 20
also.
years in. And so, by the way, I'm glad you just said that. I'm going to sidetrack from where I was going. Even as I sit here, I have to force myself to go back and think about negative experiences, because God is so good that when I think back, I don't really think about all the hard stuff and the bad stuff. I'm having to force myself to do it and thinking about this. And I think that is a benefit and a blessing that the Lord gives you. I sort of joke with my mom. My mom tells me that she had an anger problem when I was growing up. I literally don't remember it.
Yeah.
I have no recollection of it. She'll tell me situations and stories. You don't remember when this happened? And I'm like, I guess maybe a little, but the emotion's all gone.
Right.
That's part of healing. And so I know we told you to go to counseling, and it is helpful, but don't go just to dredge up old stuff. In fact, these days I almost like coaching more than counseling. Help me figure out how to get where I'm trying to go instead of just going and uprooting all the old stuff in the past. But one of the things I loved that you did, because you weren't perfect and neither was I, was even with our bonus boys, when there was a breach, when you violated 1 Corinthians 13 with them, what did you do?
I apologized. You apologize. You take responsibility for when you messed up. And that should be something, blended family or not, that you were doing a lot with your children. Like Nate said, we are constantly we're constantly in our flesh, right? We have to renew our mind and our spirit. And so when I would mess up, thankfully, I feel like God has dealt with that in my life and delivered me from that so much. And I'm so thankful, because it was only by His help, because that is how I was kind of raised, was to do that, is to kind of use your words to hurt and to deal with situations, to shut them down. And so I feel like when I did, if I had like a harsh tone, I remember you used to tell me, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I really had to deal with that. Like, God, show me how I'm saying, show me in the moment, prick my spirit when I'm saying something in a harsh way. And it didn't always happen right then, right in the moment, but I always tried to go back to one of the kids or to whoever it was, it may have been you, and just say, I'm so sorry. I know that I said that in a harsh way. I know that I may have hurt your feelings when I said that, and I'm so sorry. And ask for forgiveness. And like I said, that should be something that we're doing in our home all the time. Take
Yeah.
responsibility. Your kids need to see it's okay to mess up. You're going to mess up, and we forgive each other and we still love each other through it. So it's good to model that for your kids because we all do mess up. So
Right.
I'm sorry, apologize, take responsibility. That should be, something we all do.
Yeah. And when you do that, guess what you build? You build trust,
Right.
Because kids aren't stupid. And especially if you're raising them in church, they're hearing the word, they're reading the word, they know what the standard is and they know when you fall short. So if you walk around and pretend like you didn't, which we all have a tendency to do that. I certainly do. We all battle our own pride, but especially with kids, when you screw up in front of them, do the repenting in front of them, and use it as an opportunity to show them, you know what, you can make a mistake. You can bounce back. You can recognize what you did. You can do better. And I think now when they look back over 20 years of history, with you, with me, with us, they probably can see, oh, it wasn't as good then and it's better now because there was repentance and there was change. And hopefully they say that about me too. Why don't you go and read the next question for us here? Really practical one.
Yeah. What advice do you have for navigating holidays, traditions, and custody schedules in a way that reduces tension and keeps the focus on the kids?
Yeah, so we had a schedule question earlier. This one is a little more around traditions and navigating holidays. And let's just say this. While we're sitting here talking about how to make the most of a bad situation, that's what a blended family is in some regard.
Right.
It's making the most out of something that wasn't God's best to begin with. You're going to win some and you're going to lose some. And so there's a lot of things that we did. So if we're planning a birthday party for a kid, something that we can fudge the date on a little bit, you can move stuff around. We worked really hard to try to make sure that big moments with our family, that everyone's included.
Right.
And one of the many things that I love about your family, I should say this because we talked about how you were raised and some of it wasn't great. We all have things about how we were raised that wasn't great. But, the day, I don't know if it wasn't the day I proposed to you, but we flew back home. We had dinner with your family, and I sat around the table, and I thought, like, man, I'm not just getting an amazing wife, I'm getting an amazing family. Not perfect, but amazing. And one of the things that has blessed me and ministered to me so much over the years is how much your family worked at trying to make my two boys that didn't come from you never feel like they didn't come from you.
Right.
They are just as much grandkids to your parents as the ones that you gave birth to.
Absolutely.
Your grandparents, two of them are still with us, thank God, two or not, but they have worked hard to make those kids feel like they're great grandkids. And everyone around the support system has worked really hard to try to accommodate what's there. But here's the deal. There's only one Christmas day per year.
Right.
And there's only one Christmas morning a year. And so I think this is where, honestly, if I could give advice to people who've gone through this, like spend the money, get a good lawyer, and get a good visitation schedule, and make sure, so for us, what that ended up looking like was each year Joshua and Asher were either with us for Thanksgiving Day or for Christmas Day, but never for both, and it alternated each year. And so there is an embrace the suck factor of that we all had to do, and we didn't not have Christmas morning just because they weren't around sometimes. And so, but they were having Christmas morning with their mom and with their family. So they always got a Christmas morning experience. Some of it was with us, some of it wasn't. I think the biggest thing here is consistency and communication. I think kids don't like negative surprises.
Right.
They love positive surprises, but there's probably nothing worse for a young kid than a negative surprise.
Right.
And so don't spring it on them. You think like, oh, I don't want to tell them because then they're just going to think about it. No, give them time to think about it. Talk to them about it, and then paint the silver lining and focus on that. Here's what's great. You're going to get 2 Christmas,
Right.
you're going to get Christmas morning here and Christmas afternoon here. And, there are some benefits too.
For
Like,
sure.
kids that don't grow up in a blended family, they got 1 Christmas morning, and kids that don't, they're getting more stuff because they're a bigger family and all
Right.
that. So there are some benefits to it, but those are the things you can do to navigate the tension. Now, is there anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, just try to be fluid, try to be accommodating. We thankfully had the boys, equal 50-50 schedule, but when we didn't have them for Christmas morning, I would explain to Ellie and Luke, we're going to not open some of your presents so you can open them with your brothers. And they wanted to. They kind of on
They want that
Christmas
shared
morning,
experience,
they want the shared experience, and for them it was a loss. Like on the Christmas mornings that we didn't have the boys, it wasn't only a loss for us as parents, it was a loss for their siblings. They want them there 100% of the time. And so we would say, okay, well, you pick the presents that you don't want to open. And then as soon as they get there, we'll open them. And I remember my parents coming to our house on Christmas morning, which was actually the day after Christmas every other year, to be there to watch the boys open up their presents and just try to make it exciting. But like Nate said, let them process it, give them the truth of what's going to happen so they know what to expect and can process it ahead of time and make it fun. Make it fun.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
Yeah. Okay, how do you handle a toxic co-parent who speaks negatively about your spouse, your blended family, or your church without escalating conflict or harming your kids?
That's a tough one. Toxic situations are tough, whether it's a divorce situation, a blended family situation, somebody at work, or in a first marriage. But someone who speaks negatively about your spouse, your blended family, and your church without escalating conflict. Well, first of all, I'm going to go straight to God's word. Let's go to that first. So Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer deflects anger. Harsh words make tempers flare.
Yeah.
I think we could all do good to remember that, no matter what kind of conversation that we're in. Matthew 5:44 says, I say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And so one of the things I say a lot is either you believe the Bible or you don't. And we're all really good at cherry picking scriptures and justifying, well, I get to be angry about this. I get to lash out about this. No, you really don't.
No, you don't.
You really don't. And when you do, that's what the Bible calls sin. When I do, and I do sometimes, is what the Bible calls sin. And so whoever that lands on, it lands on, and whatever situation you're in, you should take that to heart.
Right.
But having said that, sometimes toxicity from other people can cause you a problem. Now, I'll say we didn't deal with this to the extent that I've heard other people have. But there was some of it, and I again, I know you don't want to say any of this, but I'm going to, because I think it'll help people. You did a great job of honoring that the 2 boys that I brought into this marriage they had a mom, not even another mom. That was their mom. You're a bonus mom.
Right.
And, and I'm their dad, and they're bonus dad on the other side. That's what he is.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of insecurity on the other side at times, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but it did translate into us hearing from time to time, things that were said about you, that were said about me by their mother, by other people in their family. There's a relative on the other side that told my kids, call me dad instead of him. And, and it's the grace of God, I ended up in jail after I heard that conversation, because everything in you wants to go and wants to cause a fight. There were things that were said about you that, created extra barriers and extra mountains to climb to build good relationships. And here's what I'll say. All that stuff is real. It's harder for some people than it's for others. We did experience some of that. We didn't experience near as much as what we've heard from other people. So I'm grateful for what we didn't experience. The little bit that we did, I get it. Divorce is hard. It creates weird loyalties and allegiances show up in different ways. And people feel like, oh, I've got to be the man and step up and say these harsh things to try to make a point. I might do the same. I don't know if I would do that, but there are things we would do that we might regret later that I'm sure we're done on the other side. Why do you say all that? Here's the point. The point is with the marriage that you have now. First of all, remember, this is our marriage. They don't get to have a say in what we are and who we are. So when things that I heard were negatively said about you, I just come and reinforce to you, I don't care what they said. Here's the truth about you.
Right.
And when negative things were said to the kids, this is a difference. We didn't actually go and refute those things to them. We didn't go and say, well, we heard this was said, or they would tell us, and we'd say, yeah, forget all that.
Yeah.
Look at what God's doing here. And we try to reinforce the positive. And I don't know that we walked this out to perfection, but
For sure.
I think we got an A on
Hopefully.
not talking badly about the other side.
Yeah.
That was something our counselor told us early on. I don't think we had done very much of it even to that point, because it was something that was important to you even coming into the marriage. You got that advice from other wise people. I don't remember who they were, but thank God for them.
Yeah.
And so that was something that we did guard with a high level of intentionality. I won't say perfection, but high level of intentionality. And I would guess if you were to go interview our two boys, that they would probably be hard pressed to find times that we said something negative about the other side, because they were few and far between. And so that's how you handle it. Let them say whatever they're going to say, and then you be a different person. And over time, I think there's been growth on the other side too, that we've seen and experienced, and hopefully they feel that and whatever. It doesn't, it doesn't matter. But here's what matters is what the kids experience.
Yeah.
And I think what they experienced from us was, I don't care what they say. We're going to be who we are. We're going to be who God's called us to be. When we screw up, we're going to apologize. When I say something wrong or in a harsh way, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to own it. And we're going to try to create the opposite of a toxic family household. And that's not easy to do, but it is possible. And it is something that deserves an awful lot of focus.
Yeah.
You have anything you want to add to that?
I love everything you said. I think it also ties back to honor. There are going to be things that happen in your relationship with the other family that you can choose resentment, you can choose bitterness, you can choose anger, you can choose any plethora of negative emotions, but you need to choose to focus on the good, show honor where you can. And part of that is sometimes just shutting your mouth, just closing your mouth. And, you can go process it behind closed doors. There were plenty of times when we went in our bedroom when we were away from the kids and we vented to each other about how hard that is to hear those words. But the fact of the matter is it's not the kid's fault. And you never want to put them in a position where they are looking at their other parent in a negative light. You want to do the opposite. You want to build them up. I remember times when Joshua and Asher, because kids will do this, right? Even in not blended family, kids will play each other against the other parent, right? And so I remember times where they would be frustrated and say something that one of their other parents did at their house. And I would use that opportunity. Again, I'm sure I failed at this at times, but it's not all butterflies and rainbows. But I remember always trying to say, hey, when your mom did this, when when they did this, it's because they love you. It's because they want what's best for you. So it may not have been by your choice. It may not have been something that made you happy, but we all love you so much and we're all trying to do what we think is in your best interest. And so you always try to actually help elevate the other parent to your kids.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I also want to say, we're talking a lot from our experience because that's what we can speak on most authoritatively. I do know there are situations that are far more toxic where the other side is saying God's not real, don't go to church. There's an atheist on one side. That's why the divorce maybe happened. I mean, I've known a lot of people who were Christians or became Christians and the spouse didn't, and that ultimately led to the separation. And then there's a high level of, antagonism about the faith, about the new family, about all that kind of stuff. And so I want to just speak to people that are in that situation where it's even harder. Here's the hard truth. The answer's still the same. Now, maybe you can't look the kids in the eyes and say the decisions they're making are because they love you, because maybe they don't. I mean, there are some bad situations out there where, the other parent literally uses the kid as a pawn to try to get back at the spouse. We've seen a lot of that. Yeah. And so don't say things that aren't true.
Right.
But again, if you can say something good, say that.
Yes.
And if not, then just say nothing and just reinforce consistency. And I promise over time, you don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to, they said this is the truth. They said this is the truth. In fact, I kind of set something up with my boys, even as it related to the disillusion of the marriage that I had with their mother. I just said, I'm not really going to get into it. And I told them when you're 18 years old, if you want to go sit down and talk about it, I'll answer any question that you have. One of them has taken me up on it. The other one still hasn't and may never. And that's okay, because I don't need to talk about those things. There's not something in me that needs to go and set a record straight.
Right.
But over time, I think if you can be consistent, if you can be godly, if you can keep bringing your kids to church, serving, doing all the things we've been talking about, irrespective of how toxic the other side may be, your kids will eventually see the difference. And you got to just trust train up a child in the way she go. In the end, they won't depart from it.
Yeah.
So,
And only one other thing I want to add is sit with your kids in that. I'm so sorry that was said to you. I'm so sorry that was said to you. I just want to let you know how much I love you.
yeah.
I love you so much. I know they love you so much. I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings. Give them a big hug.
Yeah.
Acknowledge what they're saying. Don't feed into it. Don't
That's right.
and try to
Yeah, you
fight
can be
and argue.
compassionate for the pain without being someone who's egging it on and
Right.
making it worse. Like, you don't want your kid. Bitterness and resentment that grows inside of you, even when it's valid, still ends up only hurting you.
For sure.
And so if you play into this stuff and you're like, oh yeah, she's crazy for saying that, your mom's a nutcase, your dad's a nutcase, you're literally planting seeds that will only produce bitterness in your kid. It will
Yes.
cause harm. They're going to need counseling, not only now because of what the toxic parent did, but because you reinforced it.
Right.
So have compassion on their feeling. I'm sorry that you're feeling this way. I'm sorry their words hurt you, but here's the truth. And focus on that. Never go back and participate in demonizing, because again, even if the stuff you say is true, even if you say that person's off their rocker and that was evil what they said, that might be a true thing to say, but it doesn't plant seeds of hope inside of your kid. It just plants more seeds of hurt.
That's right. That's right. And it's standing in between you and your relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you have that bitterness and resentment, that it's hurting you.
Yeah, there you go. Well, this is a good episode. It's running a little bit long. I'm gonna hit a couple things quickly, and then we'll have one more really important question to deal with before we get out of here. Why don't you read number 9? I'll say a few things about it, and we'll keep moving.
How do you lovingly encourage and pray for someone who has been divorced multiple times and is now entering another marriage without enabling unhealthy patterns or sounding judgmental?
Yeah, so I just want to say a couple of things on this one. This was a question that was asked, so I want to answer it. But the first thing I would say is make sure you're invited to that conversation.
Yeah.
Don't presume just because you know someone that you should start speaking into, lovingly encouraging them while you're worried about enabling unhealthy patterns and all of that. Make sure you're invited in the conversation. And if you are, then that means that you're already someone who's involved in a discipleship-oriented relationship, even if it's both ways, that you're walking with them. And then it's the same thing that it always is, whether they're going into a new marriage or not. You're
Right.
talking about sin patterns. You're talking about unhealthy, things, maybe addictions, maybe, knee-jerk responses that are sort of patternistic for someone. You're dealing with that the same way that you would in any other way. But again, I just think, like, make sure you're invited into that conversation and then handle it like any other discipleship. Let's keep going. We got 2 more here to go. What qualifies? Here's the next question. What qualifies as an emotional affair? Does it break the marriage covenant? How should couples think biblically about emotional intimacy, secret communication, financial support being given outside the marriage to somebody else? Boy, there's a lot there. Let's try to break this into a couple pieces. Ash, why don't you talk first about what in your mind qualifies as an emotional affair? And then more importantly, because the qualifying is related to the question, does it break the covenant? Maybe speak to, in your mind, what an emotional affair is, and really, more importantly, how do you prevent it and protect from it?
Yeah. So a lot packed into that question. An emotional affair is opening up to somebody from the opposite sex about what you should only be opening up to with your spouse. So I'm not going to go talk to another guy about personal things in my life. I'm not going to go talk to another guy about godly, deep things. I may have a conversation with somebody from the opposite sex, but it's going to be with Nate, with our friends in a group setting. I'm always going to respect and honor him. You just don't open that up. Which goes into, you need boundaries. So you and your spouse need to sit down and you need to talk about boundaries within your marriage, ways to protect against that. No one goes into a marriage thinking, I'm going to cheat on my spouse. I'm going to have an emotional affair, right? So just like the counseling we discussed early on, you need to be proactive about these things. You need to be proactive about what are our personal boundaries that we have. What are we comfortable with? That all needs to be discussed. For us, we're very guarded in what we will speak about to somebody from the opposite sex, and we are each other's best friend. That's who we're sharing intimate discussions with, whether it be spiritual, relational, anything. I'm not going to go talk to a guy best friend or a guy friend. I'm sorry, Nate's my best friend. I'm not going to go talk to another guy friend about something that Nate did to bother me or something that my kids did to bother me. That's an intimate conversation that should be with my spouse.
Yeah, I agree. And we're not saying, don't hear us saying you can't have any level of relationship with someone of the opposite sex. We do. I mean, we have several couples that we think of them as best friends, to us, and they are. And, and in one case, one of our best couple friends runs, the wife works with me directly, helps run our location. Her husband's
Thank
an
you,
elder.
Beth, for all
Thank
you
you,
do.
Beth, for all that you do.
Yeah.
And so obviously I have a relationship with Beth, but I
Right.
don't go to Beth instead of you,
Right.
even though she's one of your best friends and you
Right.
trust her implicitly. If I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to sit there and ask Beth for comfort, you know,
Right.
or if, I'll talk problem solving church stuff with her,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to sit there and pour
Nor
all
would
my
she let you.
emotions, and nor
Yeah.
would she let me. That's
Yeah.
part of why she's there. I mean, she's one of very few people who could be in that role.
Mhm.
Part of that is because of a relationship with you and the trust that y'all have.
Yep.
But her husband, Daniel, you would call him one of your best friends, but it's because they are our best friends.
For sure.
And so that's part of it too, you know? So when you're having, you know, relationships with the opposite sex, it's best if those are couple to couple relationships and you don't get crossed this way. So Beth's not going to become my person just because she's our best friend. Daniel's not become your person just because he's our best friend. And we've seen other people who have those scenarios and the connection grows stronger this way and the lines start getting crossed. And next thing you know, you're hearing stories that you wish weren't happening, you know?
That's right.
And that's real and that stuff really happens. And so I would say, man, do everything you can to guard against that. But as it relates to this theological question about what qualifies to break the marriage covenant, this sounds like, I don't know, because I don't know who asked it and I don't know the background. It sounds like maybe there's a situation and someone's wanting to know, can I get a divorce because of this situation? I would refer you back to the message I gave at the Strong Marriage Conference. If we could just put the episode notes, Mr. Producer, in this one for that one so they can quickly find it in the comments. Go back and listen to that first. Get your head right on divorce. And then seek out a pastor to talk, because to really answer this question, I mean, we're now talking about emotional intimacy, secret communication, secret financial support, all kinds of stuff. I have a lot more questions to ask before I can give a good answer to this. So with that, let's go to our last question today, because we're pretty long on this episode. And we know you've got... Well, you don't have other podcasts to listen to. Are there really any other podcasts? There's just this one, right?
Not as good as this one.
Not as good as this one, but maybe you have things to get to. So let's get to this last one. I want Ash to speak to this for sure, because this is a real deal. What should someone do if they're experiencing emotional or physical abuse in their marriage? What biblical principles guide safety, separation, and seeking help? Why don't you go ahead and tackle that one first?
Yeah. Well, I want to start with physical first. If you are in a situation where you are experiencing physical abuse, you need to get to a safe place. You need to leave. You can get help later, but that's the first thing that I would advise that you do. When it comes to emotional abuse, I would say it has to come to light. You need to go to, this is why it's so important to be a part of a spiritual family and stay plugged in. You need to go to your spiritual leaders and you need to bring them into this. Do not be scared to be vulnerable. We all have our stuff, but it is not God's will for you to be abused emotionally or physically. And so he does hate divorce and you know, all of that can be discussed, but you need to bring it to the light. You need to bring in spiritual leaders who can speak to that, who can help you, who can listen to your situation.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to give you two scriptures that you need to hold in tension in these kinds of situations. I'll just co-sign what you said. Physical abuse is one thing, but and you should immediately seek help and immediately get out of those situations. But emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, mental abuse, you know, where people are manipulative and controlling and they sort of create a toxic environment where you're always walking on eggshells, you can't ever be the person you want to be. You still may need to get out of that. But let's just say this. Divorce and separation are two different things.
Right.
So while we may say, hey, I mean, it's a very short list of things I would tell someone to get a divorce for. And I think I can only think of one time, and that was after, I mean, literal years of over 25 incidences of infidelity and lying and promises broken over and over. I mean, that was like the worst of the worst kind of situation, even to the point where there was physical altercations with people. I mean, it kind of had everything,
right.
You know, cops called, people put in jail. I mean, we're talking like, you know, that was one, and that's one I can think of out of how many couples have we counseled?
A lot.
So let's separate these two things first of all. Separation and divorce are two different things. There may be times and seasons where you need to separate, and maybe for a long time,
right.
And maybe with a plan and a process that has accountability and biblical wisdom that gives an opportunity for people to build themselves up and then build back closer to each other,
right.
Where eventual reconciliation and living in the home together is possible. But just because you need to separate today doesn't necessarily mean divorce, even in physical stuff. Like, I think physical stuff is bad, but sometimes people, you never know what's going on. I mean, somebody, maybe, you hear men get a bad rap, but if the woman throws the punch and the man restrains her and then these things can get complicated, and maybe what you need is space and time and a lot of time to heal, and there's still a possibility. Does that mean that you have to stay married? No, you don't. Where there has been infidelity, where there has been physical abuse, I think you can get a divorce, but don't do that in a vacuum. Involve the church. When I preached at the Strong Marriage Conference, I said there's four people, really, four entities involved in a marriage. There's the woman coming in, there's the man coming in, there's God, and then there's the church, which is really the pastor's not representing God so much as he's representing the church. And so get the church involved. Now back to the two scriptures I want you to hold in tension before we wrap this up. Psalm 82, 3 and 4 tells us, give justice to the poor, to the orphan, uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute, rescue the poor and the helpless, deliver them from the grasp of evil people. What is that saying? That's saying the heart of God wants to render justice and wants to rescue people from bad situations. And so if you're in a bad situation, we want to rescue you from it. God also says in Malachi 2:16, I hate divorce. To divorce your wife is to overwhelm her with cruelty, right? So guard your heart. Don't be unfaithful to your wife. So we have to hold these things in tension. Oppression and people who are being manipulated and abused, that needs justice, that needs to be made right. And sometimes it will lead to a divorce, but don't forget, God hates divorce too.
Right.
And even divorce that happens when it's justified still creates another set of problems and leads you back to Q&As like this where we're having to talk. So don't rush to that. Make sure that even in the most extreme situations where divorce may be permitted and may end up being the path that's taken, man, make sure it's the dead last path.
Yeah.
But make sure that when you are in an abusive situation, that getting help and getting to safety is the first move. All along the way, involve wise counsel, people that know their Bibles and they want the best for everyone involved, not even just the best for you, but for everybody. That person who's being abusive, they need help too. And there may not be yours to help, but they may be somebody else's to help. Yeah. Before I wrap up this episode, Ash, thanks again for joining us. Any last words or anything you want to share before I close this down here?
No, it was great. Also, Nate and I are open. If, we are open for questions, we're an open book with our story. So
yeah, so you can DM the Under God podcast channel. And if we get questions for us, send them our way. We'll be glad to answer. Here's what I want to just say to everybody listening as we close. First of all, blended families, they may not have been God's best, but they're also not God's plan B. Remember, God adopted us into a family. The body of Christ itself is a blended family. Mm-hmm. It's people who are separated from God, who he had every right. In fact, in the Old Testament, he divorces Israel a couple times and then takes her back. So even God has a history of divorce, you could say, with people, but inevitably he comes back and says, well, but I'm holding your end of the deal, so we're still in this thing. And so, but also remember, second marriages and blended families, while again, they may not be God's best design, they do have the opportunity to uniquely communicate the gospel to a lost and broken world. So while we're telling you, don't get a divorce, God hates divorce, if you find yourself already in that situation, you're not hopeless. That's the whole point of the gospel of Jesus. And I think that our blended family, like yours and mine, we're able to present a version of God's love to the world that other people can't. Now, that doesn't mean you go it's like Paul says, just because grace abounds, does that mean I should sin all the more? Of course not. You should not. If you're already, you're married to your first spouse, should you get a divorce so the second one can show a unique, form of the gospel to the world? Of course not. The best testimony is one man, one woman for life. But when you're in this situation, and I am, remember, God's love doesn't require perfection.
Right.
And just because something is traditional and the best doesn't mean that there can't be good. And then finally, I just want to encourage you, you're not alone. Like, we're in this. We're in ministry. Some people think I shouldn't be in ministry. I think I should. And we've talked about a lot of that in previous episodes and at the conference. But man, we're here. You're not alone. Just because you're going through it doesn't mean you're the only one. And most of all, final words of encouragement is that God sees. So hold on to hope, because God sees, God knows. And even if you can't see a way out today, that doesn't mean there's not a way out later. If you can't see a path forward now, that doesn't mean there's not a path forward later. If you can't see the hope right now, that doesn't mean there's not hope for the situation. Right. There is. So hold on to that. Remember, we serve a God who brings beauty from ashes, that brings unity from division, that brings joy out of pain. That's who we serve. So if you're believing that God and you're counting on him for your eternal salvation, don't dismiss him in the midst of your difficult marriage. I think that's all we got for today. Ash, thanks again for being here. My favorite episode so far. I don't think it could ever be trumped unless you're sitting across the table from me. I love you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Under God podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today on the Under God podcast. If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend or family member. Your support helps us reach more people with God's Word. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and at undergodpodcast.com so that you never miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, True Social, and TikTok for more content, behind-the-scenes moments, and faith-filled encouragement throughout the week. We want to hear from you. Leave a comment, join the conversation, and send us your questions. We will be answering them in upcoming Q&A episodes. Until next time, remember to think biblically about the things that matter most.